Good morning from Australia! After a 9.5 day passage from the Solomon Islands, I finally arrived in Townsville, Australia. I got in last night and docked up on the Q dock here, which is just the other side of the fuel wharf, but it's where they told me to wait for customs to come today. I'm not really sure what time they're gonna come. I don't have a SIM card, so I have no internet, but I'm just really happy not having to think about sailing my boat and sitting here and chilling while I wait for them to arrive. It's a gorgeous day, and I'm so excited to be in. Alright, I'm gonna sit outside, read my book, and drink my coffee. It's really good people watching. It's a pretty poppin' marina, even though it's only 7:30. People making the morning toilet run. People coming in on their dinghies. People coming into the fuel dock. People. Australia is pretty strict about their formalities, and as such, I was a bit nervous for the clear-in process. Oftentimes, they'll bring dogs on board, I think mostly just to sniff out freshies, because like New Zealand, they're an island country with the absence of some of the fruit and meat diseases that other countries have, so they're really careful about what you bring in. So I was fully prepared for an investigation. In Australia, this is the first country I've been to where they actually go through your entire boat. So they look through every single locker, go through all your food, but not just that, everything. And they also charge by the 15 minutes. I think it's $50 every 15 minutes, something crazy like that. So it is a bit expensive. I ended up paying about 400 Australian dollars for the entire clear-in process. This included about 40 minutes of customs agents looking through my boat, looking through every locker, and then they also charge you for the paperwork that they fill out once they get back, and then all these extra additional fees. As far as I went, all I had to show them was my passport. Since I have a New Zealand passport, I didn't have to worry about visas for myself. They wanted to see the boat registration, the clear out form from the last port, which is the Zarpe from the Solomons, to prove that I'd cleared out. And that was pretty much it from them. Then they sent me a link to pay the $450, and after a couple hours, I was completely cleared in and free to go. While I was battling stormy winds and ferocious weather sailing from the Solomon Islands to get to Australia, my buddy boat, Uhuru, with Dan on board, was enjoying the beautiful Papua New Guinea. They were slowly making their way up the northern coast of the island, getting towards Kavieng, where I was going to fly up from Townsville to join their boat for a sail from Papua New Guinea up to Indonesia and eventually Raja Ampat for some amazing diving. I spent a brief couple days in Townsville before I put my boat in the Townsville Yacht Club and Marina to leave it for 1 month while I sailed aboard the 62-foot Oyster Uhuru through places that I never would have gone on my own little gecko. Alright, I'm getting the Gek ready to be left for a month. So yesterday I flushed out the engine with fresh water, and today I'm just doing some things to get her ready to go. I have lashed a line over the mainsail cover just to hold it on in case there's strong winds. Lashed the tiller, locked the laths, gotten everything out of the cockpit, done a sweep of freshies, given everything a wipe down with some antibacterial wipes just to make sure there's nothing icky growing, and now I have this hose and I'm going into the head. And I've turned off the salt water intake for the toilet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this fresh water through it and just dry bowl it to completely flush out the salt water from the system so that it's not sitting with salt water in the pipes while I'm gone. And when you're leaving your boat, as much stuff as you can flush the salt water out of as possible, the better, because nothing like salt water other than the ocean. I can't do this and hold the phone at the same time, but basically I am holding the hose in here, letting it fill, rinsing everything down, and then dry bowling. I'll do this for about 5 minutes because it's a slow trickle, just to get the whole thing flushed out. After I'm done with this, I'm going to shut off the outtake through hull as well once I've pumped as much water through it as I can, and then I'm going to go into the galley area and turn off. There's 2 seacocks, the saltwater intake and the sink outgoing one, and turn those guys off. I can't do any flushing out of the saltwater intake system. That was the one where I flushed the engine with fresh water, but I do that through the sea strainer. On my boat, it's the easiest way to do it. But unfortunately, the hose that has the saltwater pump on it in the galley is just going to have to stay salty. there's not really any way that I can flush that, but I'm going to replace the hose anyway because it's getting kind of gross. So that's not really a big deal. The boat is all locked up, everything is closed, dinghy's on deck, I have the fenders in place and all my dock lines. Next stop, Papua New Guinea! So the land travel portion of my trip is starting now, and it started with the Uber that I requested cancelling on me, and suddenly I'm sitting for 20 minutes on the side of the road. So for all of you guys who say that sailing is brave, I think that also traveling over land is brave because there's so much that's out of your control. Uhuru of London is a 62-foot oyster captained by James Ashwell, also from England. Like me, he's also on his way on a circumnavigation, but unlike me, his boat is maintained to a very high standard of perfection where it basically looks brand new, polished, painted, with all of the modern technologies and luxuries, including a private chef, aka Dan. And James was generous enough to invite me to come visit and sail with the group for an entire month. After I arrived in Kavieng, we spent only 1.5 days before we cleared out to head towards Sorong in Indonesia, which is the jumping-off point for Raja Ampat world-class diving. Uhuru, amongst the many toys they have on board, has a dive compressor and full sets of scuba gear, so I was really excited to get in the water and do some dives. Unfortunately, we were at the end of the season, right before the westerly headwinds started, in a period where there was absolutely no wind whatsoever. For this entire 1,200-mile passage, we motored about 95% of the time. Now on Gecko, if this happened, I just wouldn't go. I'd be stuck in Papua New Guinea. But Uhuru has a beautiful functioning engine, and so off we set for one of the most chill passages I've ever been on, and James agreed. One of his most chill passages as well. James's partner, Jin, gave me a little bit of a tour of all of the navigational equipment so that when I held watches I was familiar with it, and I wanted to share it with you guys because it's just so different from what I have on Gecko. I have a depth sounder, and I have a knot meter, and I have my phone with Navionics, and those are my only navigational aids besides a VHF, AIS, and a Garmin InReach, and these guys just have a lot of really cool stuff. We also have these instruments that tell you stuff like how fast the wind is and what direction it's coming from.
Speed over ground and speed. Using this to calculate the current.
Oh.
Our moving speed is through
Right.
water, and this is the satellite speed. And also because it sends the direction, and the direction is coming from here, but we only get around 0.4.
Yeah, so this is current.
This is the wind. This is current. This is where the wind coming from. So if you look at that, our true wind is coming from back of the boat. So it shows you on here, this, the orange yellow thing is the wind speed and direction, and the purple one is the current speed and direction.
All in one convenient place.
This is the infrared one, but during the day you just don't see that. If there's a boat here, boat here, boat here, at night you can see, and you can 360. It's a 360.
Oh wow.
There are 2 cameras. Another one is colorful one.
Right.
It's on the middle of the mast.
Yeah.
And you can see if there's reef.
So this tells you
How many meter of chain that you have down on your anchor.
so you can anchor from the helm.
Yeah, and then this is up and down.
That's cool.
This is bow thruster. When you turn it on, you push left, the boat turn left. You push right, the boat turn right.
Super cool. And then these are all just the lights and stuff.
Yeah, the engine section, deck light section.
And when you're thirsty, this is a fridge in here. And it's full of cold water, cold coconuts, and Dan always makes some sort of a snack to leave in here for watches. This time we have brownies and all of these bottles of cold water that we constantly change out from the galley. So when I was in Australia, I picked up a drone battery for my friends on Katusha. You guys will remember them from one of my videos in Vanuatu. And it's so funny because we're actually just passing them now, halfway between Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. So they're gonna launch their dinghy and come over to pick up their drone battery.
Are we still moving forward? Yeah, but that's the smallest camera on Earth.
Yeah, my GoPro stopped recording audio. Hello!
This is the weirdest thing ever. Crazy. It's totally crazy.
Yeah, what about this? The sea is so calm.
No
Yes.
wind.
Nothing, yeah? What about fish? No, what about it? No.
Have you been motoring completely?
You're ahead.
Have you had any wind?
Since we left Air Mites, not motoring all the
It's
way.
awful, hey?
That was the day we
Now
could
it's
sail
like,
then.
what, 24 hours? No?
Did you sail leaving that? We were sailing then.
To Cagayan to Air Mites, we could sail a little,
Yeah.
you know? I would say how?
I passed the drone battery over to Lucas, and they stayed and chatted for a bit before heading back to their own boat to continue the long motor to Indonesia. It's kind of nice knowing that we're not the only ones out here in the middle of the ocean just motoring away. Katusha was clearing in slightly before Sarong because they didn't quite have the same range of motoring as Uhuru has. We put the drone up in the sky and recorded the two boats as they slowly peeled away from each other out into the big blue. What a surreal experience, delivering mail in the middle of the ocean. So it's just another day at sea. We did laundry today. Just took everything out of the washing machine and now it's hanging up on the line. Autopilot is on, steering the boat. And what's going on down here?
Oh, just, vacuuming and polishing ready for the next guest. I love sailing.
This is my second night on passage and it's just been crazy because, well, we knew there was no wind when we left, so it was going to be a motor. Obviously motoring on the Gek is totally different. It's loud, it's slow, and this boat you can barely hear the engine. We're motoring at about 6 to 7 knots. There's beautiful sunshade, protection, and there's 4 of us, so watches are short and chill. Beautiful sunsets, sunrises. We've been stopping for swim calls. It's just been truly incredible and just so very different from being on the Gek. It's really fun. The guys have said that they've never had a passage like this before either because they always leave when there's wind, but there's just no wind right now and we need to get pushing because we need to get to Indonesia before the westerly winds start for the season. So it's kind of we've sort of waited until the tail end of the season, but it's a very cool passage to be on, very relaxing, almost like not being at sea at all. I spent the entire day today editing a video for my next YouTube. We just saw 3 sperm whales. We were able to get the boat right up next to them and we were going to jump in and try to swim with them, but they swam away before we could get too close. We didn't realize they were spermies when we were thinking about swimming with them, and now I'm kind of glad we didn't, just because they do hunt fish and their sonar can actually burst your eardrum. Oh, it's so chill. So maybe it's good we didn't get in the water with them, but they were super chill, really cool. Just another day of no wind. There's a group of 7 boats who kind of were waiting to the end of the season to head from Papua New Guinea over to Indonesia, and we all got caught out by this surprise earlier than usual in the season turning of the wind. So 7 of us are all in a line motoring through the calms right now, trying to get to Indonesia before the wind and the counter current starts. Okay, snack time. Do we have any snacks? I'm feeling snacky.
Just reaching into the freezer. I made an ice cream yesterday.
What?
Would that suffice?
I think so.
Strawberry ice cream, maybe in a cup. Un strawberry gelato, por favor, s'il te plaît.
Mamma mia! For breakfast, we had smoothies on the bow. Dan's been cleaning. I just hung up a fresh load of laundry on the foredeck, and lunch is, I'll let Dan tell you what lunch is. What's lunch?
cucumber, avocado, gazpacho. Ooh, you think some diced cucumber in it, you know?
Ooh.
Diced avocado.
Oh, on the top?
Yeah.
As a little garnish, that could be pretty. And some homemade pitas. Dan is heating up. I think they're pitas, or are they naans?
Both, whatever you choose.
Homemade flatbread, warming on the pan. Jen is doing more visa stuff with all the passports.
James isn't doing anything.
Well, you just put away your work. Time to do dishes.
Four feet on the stripes in the Alabama highway. Out there in the open, just a wishing and a hoping. I could smell the pines when I let you in the doorway. Took the seat next to mine like you've been there before. I'm befriended in an illusion.
So I'm just finishing my watch, 3 to 6 today. Otherwise I get to sleep through the entire night without any interruptions, except to close the hatch when it rains. We're allowed to take 15-minute naps on watch if we want to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This one I was sort of awake for, so I just hung out. But I'm about to get off, which means I can go back to bed and sleep as long as I want to. In this case, probably only a couple hours because it gets too hot during the day and then it's hard to sleep. But it's pretty cool to just have one watch and then not have to think about it anymore, unlike on Gecko where I'm just always on call. Just taking in the laundry, fresh from the line, fresh from the washer, and remaking the bed. These are things that don't happen on the Gek.
But it's super entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I'm just watching Dan work. So we're coming near the mouth of a river, and even though we're 50 miles offshore, there's still a ton of logs in the water. We're passing some that are 30 feet long.
Log bill goes on for a long way.
Real problem.
The amount of debris in the water right now is insane. We have a permanent bow watch keeping an eye on things and shouting instructions back to the person on the helm. There's huge logs, there's entire trees that are in the water with all their branches on. And there's also a lot of garbage that's starting to pop up in the ocean. I haven't seen this much garbage in the ocean probably since the Caribbean, and it's a little bit distressing to see. The Pacific Islands, you know, you're always going to see garbage washed up on the beach, but we're seeing water bottles and ramen cups everywhere, and just, yeah, an insane amount of stuff getting flushed out of the river. Wow,
Crazy, eh?
it is. So at sunset, seems like the logs have lessened, and there's also 2 knots of current with us, so we're gonna slow the boat down by 2 knots, but still be maintaining the same average, so if we do hit a log, it won't be as bad. Dan and I are making Greek dinner tonight. We're gonna have sunset dinner on the bow. Very fancy. It's a rough life out here. Full of hazards and hard times, for sure.
Stand loose, yeah, get by when you're at my side.
It is our 6th day out and we're starting to run along the coast of Indonesia, which is pretty cool. I'm on the 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. watch and got to watch the sunrise this morning, did some stretching. We keep going through these patches of logs, and right now we're in sort of another log patch, so I'm keeping a pretty close eye out in front of us. There's some big ones and some really giant palm fronds, like 30-foot long palm fronds, which I'm not entirely sure how that's possible. I would love to see the tree that they came off of, but I can see the mountains of Indonesia now, which is pretty exciting. The wind is starting to pick up from the west, basically dead ahead of us, but we're still maintaining over 6 knots, which is going to put us in the day after tomorrow in the morning around 8:30, which is pretty cool. So the breeze feels amazing. Everyone else is asleep still. This is another reason I love these early morning watches, because it's just me out here, and I don't know, it's nice.
Yeah, that's
Another fun hazard to navigation is all the fishing boats that come off from the coast to go find their fads that they just leave drifting around in the ocean. These fads are pretty huge. They're probably half the length of Gecko or more, and as tall as her lower spreaders, and largely unlit at night, plus all the fishing boats around at night, often not lit as well. These guys swung by and offered us some fish, but unfortunately it was just too hard to get them to come alongside with a little bit of swell that was going on, and we'd already caught our own fish, but it was super friendly of them. So the watches were even more important now, to just keep a constant eye out for everything in the water. It's our last day at sea, and it is the nastiest day of the whole trip. We've had basically sunshine and no squalls every single day, but today it's squally, headwinds, a good day to make you appreciate being in. Finally, after 8 days at sea, we arrived in the port of Sorong to clear in. Now, James used an agent, so the clear-in process was pretty straightforward. Jin does most of the paperwork, and he'd been supplying the agent with everything he needed for several weeks. An entire barrage of customs officers came onto the boat in 3 waves. There's the biosecurity inspection guys who also check through your medicine to see if there's anything expired, which they then take, and they take expired cans. They're all about the expired things. They also require a list of all the food that you have on board, all the alcohol that you have on board, all the medicine. Basically, they want to know everything on your entire boat, which on a boat the size of Uhuru probably took a lot of work to compile. Then the customs guys come, there's about 5 of them, and the immigration guys, there's also about 5 of them, and it's kind of like a party. They rock up in their boat, they all sit around the table and chat. I keep it in the back of my mind when I was sitting out there with Uhuru, just, you know, I'm going to have this experience in Indonesia on Gecko, and I was kind of chuckling to myself because the boats that they show up in are often about the size of Gecko herself, and there's no room in the cockpit for this many people, so it's just going to be a hilarious experience whenever I clear in. But I've heard if you clear in without an agent, it takes a couple days, because there's just a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork, but with an agent, we were all cleared in by the end of the day, and I went ashore with Dan to do some re-provisioning and get some treats for that night. The town of Sorong is quite beautiful. It's where all the land tourists fly in and get aboard these beautiful live-aboard boats, and then they go out and do dive trips for 5 to 7 days at a time. We, on Uhuru, were going to be going to the same spots, just on our own private boat, so a very nice experience. The town was bustling and beautiful and full of life and people. We could hear the mosques singing their call to prayer, which just adds this very foreign feel to whatever town you're in. And it was a very just lovely entry into Indonesia, quite a beautiful place, and even though the passage was easy, it's always nice to get in after being at sea for a week. Thanks for watching this week's video. I put new videos out on YouTube every 2 weeks, and for my patrons, you guys get a snack on the weeks that I don't put out a full-length episode. Also, I'm so close to reaching 100k subscribers, so if those of you who've watched this and enjoyed it aren't yet subscribed, please hit that button and help me out, because I'd love to get to 100k. What up? This was a really fun sort of swapping of the lives Freaky Friday type of episode to edit, and it was especially weird for me because I was just coming off of this really hardcore passage from the Solomons. If you haven't seen that already, definitely go back and check it out. It was gnarly. It was gnarly. And so to go from that to just the most chilled out passage ever on this beautiful, comfortable boat was really mind warping. Like, there's so many different ways to sail and travel, and they're all fun in their own right, and it's cool to experience as many of them as possible. So I hope you guys liked Uhuru. It was a really incredible experience for me. Thank you, patrons, for supporting me and making this trip possible. If you'd like to become a patron, my Patreon is patreon.com/windhippie, and I like to have interactive conversations with my patrons, and they request videos sometimes, specific things they want to see on my boat that I don't show on YouTube, so it's almost like we have tutorials on there sometimes. I've answered questions about how I up my dinghy on deck by myself, how I do certain things with my rig, like whatever extra questions you guys have for me, you can go ahead and send me a message on Patreon, and I'll make a special custom video for all of you to see whatever you want. I also have a PayPal for one-time donations, paypal.me/windhippie, and all of those are what feeds me and feeds the boat and keeps the boat running and keeps me able to keep going and exploring and doing these sorts of things. So thank you for all of those. Also merchandise, all in the links below if you want to buy Windhippie things. Thank you, Tish, for always reminding me when I need to do another edit and helping me get these up on YouTube on time. Right now this edit is coming to you from a little river in Australia where I'm just sweltering in the heat. It's quite warm here. And it's a lot of footage to wade through. This one, I had footage on my phone, footage of the drone stuff, footage on my DJI. My GoPro had, at this point, died, so it's just footage everywhere, pulling stuff from all over the place. It's been a bit more of a involved edit, but I do love the edits. I love to see it all coming together, and I love the feedback that you guys give me so that I can continue to make them exactly the way you want to see them sometimes. Anyway, I think that's all for now, so I appreciate your comments. I read them all. I love them all. I love you guys, and I will see you patrons next week on Patreon, and YouTube people, I'll see you in another 2 weeks on YouTube with my next episode.